So we have been on a journey that talked about growth from your physical being to your instincts, emotions, intellect, integration, and transcendence. And we just got covering those concepts and the idea behind it. And today I was going to talk about complaining and start laying out the foundations for the methods of peace. So, and before the cycle ends, I will be doing a review so that we can get a big picture, so that I can tie it all together, because we have covered a lot of ground. Okay, so we talked about complaining, and we started covering the concept of how complaining actually is your desire to be whole. And then why is complaining such a bad thing on the whole? So, complaining. If complaining is your desire to be whole, desire to be whole, another word for integration, because you cannot have wholeness without integration. So then oftentimes why is it that complaining is considered to be a bad thing? It's because complaining comes from a sense of being a victim. Complaining is a learned behavior. When we were younger and we wanted to do something and we were not allowed to, or we are somehow stopped, that desire doesn't go anywhere. That desire to be able to do what it is you wanted to do, that doesn't go anywhere. And oftentimes we're not taught how to deal with that desire. Instead, most oftentimes we're taught to stuff it down. Of course, it never gets stuffed down. You know, it's like any good stuffing. The more you stuff it, the more it starts bulging out. At some point, it bursts like a good turkey. So, you know, it's kind of like the same idea. So you need to do something with it. Otherwise, it overflows. So, if you have this concept that complaining really is actually a desire to be able to follow your interests, because your interests naturally bring you towards integration. Because your interest is actually what takes you through your developmental process, right? So if you remember, so I'm bringing together a lot of different concepts from the very beginning, but your interests is actually what guides you through where you are in your development. What you were interested in when you're 4 years old, you're no longer interested in. There's a certain amount of mastery in it. But isn't this interesting that there are some things that used to happen to us, and you can go back for however young you were, but there are certain tendencies that you want to get rid of that, how should I say, is bringing pain into your life. And as far as you know, you've been doing that forever. Now, it's actually really not forever. You'll notice that it actually started at a certain point if you look far back enough. But it never integrated. For one reason or another, you didn't learn how to deal with it versus you just learned to stuff it down in one way or another, or ignore it, whatever you want to call it. And so the process of integration is where you learn to follow your interests genuinely and honestly, where you get to explore it, where you get to explore that process. So that's a big part of Gong Fu. Gong Fu is creating that environment where you can actually naturally follow it. And when you have the recognition of following your interest in a disciplined manner, we call it training. So now you have a group of people who want to train how to follow their interest and cultivate themselves. So that becomes a basis. So complaining actually becomes a great place to explore yourself. Where did you not get integrated? Where did you not get the opportunity to actually get to know yourself? And one of the things that you will notice is that if there is a certain pain that keeps reoccurring in your life, you can try and do away with it all you want, and you may be able to do away with it from the moment. This is very interesting. Until you have realization, it will not go away. And I'll actually tell you this from my own life. So when I first learned the power of meditation to cut through your thoughts, I thought, I've got this. Why? Because now I can meditate away all my problems. And so, yeah, I know, it's great. And when you become very powerful in meditation, you actually can do a lot of different things with it. And the thing is that you can actually find peace, but it's very interesting. Even then, at some point, it starts bottling over. I read a very interesting article that was, I talked about this earlier in the cycle, that was written between a psychoanalyst and a Zen master. The Zen master had learned to be in the now, and after years, and I believe he was in his 70s, he actually started getting psychoanalytical treatment, because what he had found is that some of the things that had happened in his youth actually had not resolved. And so even though he was in the now, the moment he came out, he kept getting plagued until he said he could not continue any longer. And it's a very beautiful thing where he says that as he came into connection with himself and his past, he said it actually allowed him to be more genuinely in the now. And so, and when you start knowing the power of meditation, there is actually a place where you really just want to be in the now. But I'm going to say that at that point, even meditation becomes distraction. Even meditation becomes distraction, because you're using the now to distract yourself away from your intelligence, from your interest. I'm sorry, not your intelligence, your interest. And so it actually can become a stumbling block to integration. So interesting, isn't it? But meditation can also become a very powerful tool for integration, because it sharpens your awareness of the now. So it is actually true that you can be more present. And so if you are more present in the now, you can actually use that awareness of the nowness to actually really go and explore that part of you that is in pain with much compassion. So this is kind of actually where we're coming to. Not using the meditation, and not using meditation to escape into the now, which is not even real peace, but actually using meditation to get to know yourself. So get to know yourself. Know self. So what does being a victim look like? And this is what you will notice. A victim either blames the self or others, or so the circumstances of whatever is happening on the outside, or the self. Now the issue about complaining is that there's always an element of truth to it. That's actually the issue. If it wasn't true, it wouldn't be an issue, because we couldn't fool ourselves. The only reason we can fool ourselves that the issue is outside is because it's true. If somebody, let's say for instance, did something unkind to you and you're feeling lots of anger about that, it is true. That person probably should not have been unkind to you. That's definitely true. But how much does your life change if you say, well, that person shouldn't have been unkind to me? And you sit there. At that point, that becomes complaining because nothing happens. That person really should not have done that. And I would like to postulate, keep saying it actually. And then let's say, for instance, you say that for another 10 years. I'm going to ask, what's going to change? Something does change, doesn't it? So you get gong fu. You get gong fu in being in suffering and misery. So, one of the things I love saying is that you always are training. The question is, what are you training, right? It's really actually, you never get away from training. You can't get away from training. You're going to get good at something. So you're either going to become a really bitter old, person, or the reverse. And what you'll notice is that you can really see in the faces of all the people. Their gong fu is etched in their face and their being. You look at the face, sometimes you see an older person and you just want to be next to that person. You don't even need to, that person doesn't even need to say anything. As a matter of fact, actually, as they get older, sometimes what they say sounds very repetitive, and how should I say this? In terms of what they say, really doesn't really matter. But you don't care anyways. The way they say it and the way they hold their expression, you just love being next to that person. It's like you want to be like a cat. And then, on the other hand, there's that person where they don't need to say anything, and being next to them brings you somehow anxiety, right? So it's gong fu. That's years of accumulation. It's not that easy to accomplish that. It's a real feat. So with that awareness and with that idea, if you understand what it means to be a complainer, this is the only reason. Actually, complaining itself, from a very strict perspective, because it comes from a desire to integrate, it can be one of the most powerful things depending on what you do with it. And so the first thing I'm trying to accomplish today is for you to not have any judgment against complaining, because this is actually what we do. So the first thing is not to have any judgment. One of my favorite quotes from the Bible is, "Love your enemy." It's probably because it's so challenging a thought, love your enemy. And another one actually is, it says, "Resist not evil." Now, isn't it challenging? I mean, like when I first heard that, I was like, oh. But isn't it profound if you really think about it? It's really profound. And what I would like to say is that I would like to say, if you there's actually this really beautiful thing. It says that Jesus says this. He says, if you only love your friends, even robbers and bandits actually love their friends. Not a big deal. He said, but loving your enemy is challenging. Loving your enemy is challenging. And I like to say that isn't that the very definition of unconditional love? We talk about unconditional love, and we really want unconditional love. And I like to say that unconditional love starts from within. And it starts with a simple concept of actually maybe not being so judgmental about something as simple as complaining. Because complaining is actually oftentimes at the foundation and basis of a lot of our lives. And what happens if we actually become loving towards a complaining and befriending it? Maybe looking at it as not such a negative thing. Because this is typically how it happens. you complain, and then you find yourself complaining, and you don't like the fact that you complained, and so you beat yourself up. Number one. Number two, you say, you know what? I complained, but that person really did something wrong, and you know what? It's like, this is not complaining, this is just saying the truth. Either way, I know talking about this thing is great. It really brings some humanity into it. So I'd like to say, let's not go into either place, but maybe this is an interesting way, and this is actually where I'd like to close, and just play with this until Wednesday, because I'm going to build on this. Because, as I said, for 21 days, we're going to train this together, forming a new basis. Our lives will be transformed. It's going to be great. We'll have, somebody told me, football tales, I think, football injury tales. Apparently, men like to get together and talk about the football injuries. We'll get together and talk about our feats and war against complaint in a healthy way, where it will sound like this. It will sound like, you know, I found this complaint, and I found myself actually listening to it, and I found a lot of healing with it. As I accepted that part of me, I realized that part of me, that complaint that I didn't like so much, was still a part of me. Or my hatred or my judgment towards this other person, which was a complaint, I realized actually really was about something entirely else. But before you can even get there, you have to lose your judgment of complaint. So I guess we have a homework cut out. Feel free to share your experiences on the e-community. That's actually a very good way. When Kohl's, they say, there's this beautiful story, I forgot where I heard it, but somebody was saying, how can I continue in my spiritual journey? And the person, the master, was actually stoking some fire, and he used a thing, which, excuse me? No, it's something that you grab the log with. The tongue, thank you. He used a tongue, and he grabbed one piece of like coal and put it aside. And then at first, you know, it started glowing, but then it's what you call fizzed out, and the fire died. And then he put it straight back into the fire with the other coals, and poof, it was back there. And it said, train with others. Keeps the fire going. Train with others. So you hear somebody else and their experience, you go, whoa, and it inspires you. Even when you feel lost. Or sometimes it's not even that about, it's like, you know, like I'm dealing with this and I can't not complain, and I can't stop myself from judging myself. And if you share that, you'll be surprised by the responses you get. You'll hear the responses such as, wow, you know what, me too. And that's healing. So that's where I want to start. So let's start there. Let's say, befriend your complaining. So here's the homework. Befriend your complaining. See what happens to it. And of course, when I say that doesn't mean, okay, let's complain more. I'm not saying that. So, okay. Any questions before we close? Oh, you know, that's a good question. I read that years ago, so actually I don't remember. But if I find the article, I will actually send it to you. So it was an article. So it was yes. Oh, yes. But actually, your question was, who was a psychoanalyst in the Roshi? And the answer is, I don't know. I'm actually learning. I started listening to my own talks, and I was like, I got to repeat the questions. So, but anyways, yeah. But when I find the article, it was really well done, and it was actually in the professional journal among the psychoanalysts. Yes, it was actually a really well written piece. So, yes.
I'm wondering about the definition of complaining versus saying something not in a complaint that might not be 100% positive.
I see. So you're saying what is the difference in definition between complaint and actually mentioning something or talking about something that's not 100% positive? Okay. What I would like to say is actually the main difference will be, there are several different aspects, but the main difference will be in your attitude. That's actually not something I was going to cover today because I just wanted you to become aware in a positive light. So just make a connection to the part of you that complains. Because if you don't even know you're complaining, there's no hope. That's actually the truth. Sometimes you say, well, that wasn't a complaint. I wasn't complaining. But more to what you're saying, what's the definition of complaint? One big part of it is the attitude. The question is, why are you mentioning this thing that is negative? So the most important part is actually the attitude. Because the method can be wrong, but if the attitude is right, eventually you'll find the right place. Right? If the intention is good. So let's say, for instance, you could say, you made me angry when you said that. So now that the expression of it is complaint. But let's say, for instance, that person actually felt, I really want to be in peace with this person, but I feel like this is really difficult, so we got to hash it out. Now that intention is actually really good. But it may start off very fiery. The other person might, whoa, you, me? Like, is it just like you're saying it's all me? Well, how about what this thing you did? I'm saying, and if the person has good intention, the person eventually at some point will say, well, no, I wasn't trying to blame you. I was just saying that, that particular thing you were doing, made me feel this way. And that intention oftentimes will help you get there. But then there is an actual practice that reflects the intention. And the you and the me's will go away. And the description will center around the behavior itself. And that's actually oftentimes the difference. So, but we'll cover that in more detail. So, but thank you for that question. That was an excellent question. Okay. So if you have any more questions, let's cover it after class. But for today, let's close.